Hello there, good afternoon. Hope you're doing well on this October day. And today we're going to go at this a little differently than my normal videos. Today I am going to do a little bit of focus on a Thursday, which is not the day I typically make the videos, but today we're going to talk about a timely and relevant context to what we are experiencing as a global humanity. And specifically what I'm pointing to is the fact that we are undergoing what the CDC has classified a global traumatic event through COVID-19. And I think that we can each attest to the fact that it is true that we've individually suffered loss, grief, turbulence, feelings of insecurity and not feeling safe. That's true for us as individuals, it's true for our families, it's true for our communities, our workspaces, in so many different ways. And there absolutely have been silver linings, and there absolutely have been opportunities for growth. However, there's a lot of turbulence and a lot of feelings of deep fatigue, disappointment, impatience that individuals and communities are experiencing. So, with that, I want to bring the conversation to you today about trauma. Okay, so trauma, very much like grief, has layers to it. Yeah, and it's also something that summates. So you may have experience of grief and trauma in your past, and this can absolutely be something that you can relate to then, that if you have had past grief or trauma and something hard happens in your life, feelings get stirred up, right? And you may be a little bit more upset, a little more angry, a little more impatient. And that's kind of the point, is that this is something that we need to pay attention to here and now with the trauma that we are each experiencing associated with COVID-19. So really, there are three different types of trauma that I want us just to be aware of as we have a conversation today. The first is one, particularly if we think about those who are in the medical caregiving professions, the first one that may come to mind is the trauma associated with physical impact. So where we have trauma to our physical bodies that requires attention and care. So that's trauma number one. Trauma number two in the psychosocial realms is going to point to emotional, psychological forms and impacts of trauma, which do have physiologic ramifications for sure, but that's the second type of trauma. The third type of trauma is one that some people may be familiar with, but they certainly will recognize when I point it out in this way. It's called vicarious trauma or secondary trauma. And that is when it's not us that is experiencing the trauma, but we witness this trauma. We hear it, we see it, whether it's in our environment or it's on the news. And if we have empathic tendencies, we tend to feel it even more deeply. We feel with those that are suffering, whether that be fellow human, whether that be animal, or whether, quite truthfully, it be environment. I think that, for an example, when you think of the big wildfires that were happening in California, how could you not feel for each human, animal, plant life, environment? Yes, all of that. When we witness that, it has an impact on us emotionally, psychologically, and whether we know that or not, subconsciously, it could be layering down a residue on your heart and on your spirit. And that's very valuable to know that that is also a source of potential emotional disruption, distress for us. So physical trauma, the types of trauma that happen to humans in terms of psychosocial trauma, things like death and illness and divorce and loss of any type trauma, and the type of trauma where we are witnessing and observing trauma. It's not ours, but it's impacting us as if it were. Okay, we are, many of us, very visual of learners, and adult learners in general really gravitate when they have a visualization of abstract concepts. It helps it to stick. So we're going to do a little thing today. And this was the best way I could find to actually bring this to you. So I'm going to do this, okay? This, my friends, is the trauma graph. So what I want to do here is I'm going to bring it closer and talk to you through what we're seeing here. Okay, we get it so you can see it. There we are. Perfect. Okay, so on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, what we're looking at is time. And in fact, you could put an arrow on each end of this timeline because like grief, the processes can go forwards and backwards and up and down. All right. And on the y-axis, the vertical axis, emotional lows at the bottom, emotional highs at the top. So let's apply this curve, if we could, to the trauma of COVID-19 in our common lives. So here we are over, if we think around December 2019, January 2020, there were the murmurs, the first murmurs of a virus that was developing over in Asia, causing people to be quite ill or to die. And it's not the first time that we've heard of these types of viruses developing in other countries. So we were paying attention, but not really close attention. But there was the initial murmurs of something, a little threat. Then this got a little bit stronger. Oh, you mean it's in other countries now as well? The United States, it's in Europe, Australia. Oh, this virus is moving and it's serious. When somebody becomes sick with it, they're very sick, and people who have immune compromise or maybe older are dying. So we start to really get nervous about this in our own lives and our communities. What is this going to mean for me? Is it going to come to my house? What's it going to mean for our community? Then bam, impact. This was going to be around March, April of 2020. So right there. Think about that for yourself. When it occurred here in the US, I live here in Washington State. This was one of the first states to shut down. Our governor recognized quickly, because of what the impact was on our senior community, things needed to slow down. We needed to really recognize the need to get some sense of protection around ourselves and around our most vulnerable peoples. So when that's going on, what we experienced was an incredible degree of, oh my goodness, what is this going to mean? Am I going to be impacted? Is my family? Travel started to be restricted. We started having concerns about toilet paper. We did. Everybody started doing the things they could do to take control, like buying lots of toilet paper. But we, in all seriousness, we really started to take stock of cost-benefit ratios around, is it safe for me to go to the store? Is it safe for me to do this or that? We had no idea. We had no idea, right? So this is the impact. Am I safe? Is my community safe? What do we need to do? Heavy emotion. Then what we do as humans when we are faced with a crisis, quite cool, we come together. We really do. We pull together as a community to support one another, and woof, up into the heroic phase we go. We've got this. We're resilient. We're going to band together. We're going to support our grocery stores. We're going to support our restaurants. We're going to do takeout. We're going to do PPE and new ways of approaching patients, particularly in the field of veterinary medicine that I'm in. So we learned things like curbside for veterinary medicine. Okay, we can do this. The thing is here, though, that's an emotional peak, yes, but we can't sustain it physiologically, psychologically. As humans, we can't. It's a great feeling, but time goes on and the disillusionment phase happens. And down we go into this hope, disappointment place, right? This roller coaster. Underneath this is inventory taking, where we are taking stock of our lives, of our resources internally, externally, and we're doing that cost-benefit ratio. Is it safe for me to do this? Is it worth going to the gym? Is it worth me hanging out with that friend? In terms of, am I going to put myself at higher risk or my family at risk? Lots of decisions. Is this the right job? How am I going to manage homeschooling my children and balancing my job? So many decisions, right? Guys, we're still doing this. Almost 2 years into it, and we are still inventory taking. I know many of us have heard of the great resignation that's happening around the world. People are taking stock and leaving jobs, roles, professions, because they are needing to do something differently. Maybe it's not in line with their values. Maybe it's not in line with what they need to do to feel fulfilled. Maybe it's because they have to allocate their energy in a way that's more efficient and smart for their lives now. Inventory taking. We're doing it every day. At the bottom here, this hope disappointment cycle, you'll notice it says trigger events underneath here. Like any other type of trauma, trigger events come in lots of different shapes and sizes. This could be somebody close to you not being well or passing away. Maybe it's the hope that the vaccine is going to make our lives better. Oh, Delta variant, it goes down. Hopeful, hopeful, things are opening. I'm going to be able to travel again. Oh, I don't feel so well. Maybe this is COVID. Down goes the emotion. So you can see how it could be something associated with COVID or not at all. It's just life showing up, and it stimulates all the distress. Okay, trigger zone also means physiologically, emotionally, physically, we are also, really all of us have been undergoing chronic stress for almost 19 months. Our mammal bodies do not like that. Our brains, our emotional regulating capacities do not like this. It compromises our sleep, our appetite. Many people are experiencing increased amounts of insomnia and headaches and anxiety and depression. If you had mental health challenges prior to COVID-19, maybe they're getting stirred up again. Maybe there was grief that you had processed that's getting stirred up again. Past traumas, same thing. You can't tuck that away on a shelf and say that that's not going to arise again for you, because it may show up, maybe not as strong, but it may exacerbate your current experience of frustration, anger, or sadness. So things feel harder. You feel more tired. So when you are experiencing this deep sense of fatigue and you're wondering why am I so tired? Or why is my brain so foggy? I don't know where my short-term memory is gone. Why do I feel like I don't have the bandwidth to be creative or to give more of myself in these spaces where I would have historically? Because you're human and you're on planet Earth today experiencing this. So what else? What else on this curve? Well, here's some important things. Here's this inflection point at about a 1 year. We call this an anniversary reaction. And basically it's pointing to the fact that at time markers, sometimes we recognize that there is then in the last year, what have we been through? What are the losses? What are the growth opportunities? But we take stock again, and it comes up every year. Think of 9/11. Think about what we do around 9/11. It's also an opportunity to head into what's called post-traumatic growth and recovery. This is important because this is proven, this is research-based, that we as humans are capable with grief and with trauma to find healthy coping mechanisms that work for us. And not one size fits all. It is not. And so you have to figure out what will work for you, what will work for your family, what works for your teams that you're in, to move into what's called the reconstruction phase. This is where, one very compassionate step at a time, we move forward into what is next. I think if anybody hears the words new normal any more than we've already heard it, we'll just gag. We're done. We don't want to hear that anymore. How about what's next? What's healthier? What do we want? What do we need in our lives and for ourselves? That's reconstruction. That's post-traumatic growth and recovery. So a couple of things that I want to make sure that we're talking about right here, just to get you curious and maybe to get the cogs turning around what may work for you to help find your way up and out of this. If particularly optimism is not your strong suit, or you're just not feeling it, optimism can be learned and strengthened. Martin Seligman is a terrific author on learned optimism. So maybe you start to investigate opportunities to hone your awareness and your skills around seeing the world through a more positive, optimistic lens. There's also reframing, which is tethered to that. Reframing takes opportunities that are challenging and puts a spin on them and says, yes, this is hard, and I can hold space for it and learn and grow with this. What is it here? Why is this opportunity in front of me? I call those unscheduled learning opportunities, right? So reframing. Reframing also is where you take an opportunity to look around and recognize that everything does not suck in your lives, okay? It doesn't all suck. There are things that are okay. And in fact, there's some things that are really good. Opening up your awareness to those things and letting them in, speaking them out, maybe even journaling about them, helps your brain to create new neuronal pathways to see the good, let it in, and to shift our natural inclination to see and experience and hold on to negative. We shift. And that's reframing. That's letting in the good. The last bit is gratitude practices. Powerful, not in a soft woo-woo gratitude way. Gratitude is powerful. There's been a lot of research around the neuroscience of gratitude practices. There are many different ways to approach this. I ask you to please get curious. There's a really great article I came across through positivepsychology.com that just took a look at the neuroscience of gratitude. Really great, straightforward review of some of the things that we as humans experience with gratitude, such as increases in dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, decreases in cortisol, leaning into our parasympathetic nervous system as opposed to just staying in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn of sympathetic. There are practices that are listed there, and it may just be a springboard to additional conversations. So gratitude practices are powerful. These are some of the examples of things that we can each do, and we can call others that we care about around us to do, to move out of this really heavy, hard, exhausting space and into the what's next. What do you want? What do you need? What are you dreaming about? What do you aspire to be? Dream a little, okay? Energize yourself in the ways that make sense. All right? Not a false positivity experience here where I'm telling you to think positively and it's all going to be fine. That's not what I mean. I'm asking you to perhaps recognize what's good. Acknowledge that you have wisdom and capacity for growth and learning that will fortify you and will bring you forward. And to demonstrate an immense amount of grace and compassion, please, please, to yourself, to know that you are okay. You're all right. What you're experiencing is a part of what we are each experiencing in our own way as a human on planet Earth today. It's challenging. It's complex. Yes, we can do this. We're also very resilient as a species. So I invite you to maybe take on some of these concepts for yourself, marinate with them a little bit, and find some practices that may be beneficial to you. Thank you for your time and your attention in listening to this today. I hope it's been useful. Please share it out. Please have these conversations with people that you care about in your world. Normalize the conversation. Don't isolate yourself. Instead, come together in compassionate community. We can do this. All right, my friends. Be well. Namaste.